So today I'm going to make a video about publishing a paperback book through KDP Print. So this is Kindle Direct Publishing. It's kdp.amazon.com. And I've made videos in the past about CreateSpace. For many years, CreateSpace has been Amazon's print-on-demand company. It's been a little bit weird because they had CreateSpace for print, they had KDP or Kindle for ebook. They also have Author Central where you can manage your book. So they basically have three separate platforms for all of your books. So it makes a lot of sense that they're finally merging them together and trying to shift people over to make paperbacks on KDP. And I'm going to kind of talk about that process. I've actually been warning people against it for a while because what they were doing originally was just taking people and trying to shift them over to the new platform, KDP. And some people say that it's the exact same printers, it's the exact same files, everything should work the same. The problem is that it actually doesn't. So a lot of people, when CreateSpace started offering to let you move your stuff over to KDP Print, they have a kind of easy option. They've been pushing it through 2018. The problem is sometimes that conversion would go pretty well. They would move everything over. It would look fine. It would even order or print fine. But then if you go to make changes to the price or the description or whatever, and you try to save the book that's now in KDP, the files won't work anymore. There'll be errors. It's been a pretty buggy process. I've heard this from lots of authors, which is why I've kind of told people, until they actually force you to move, you might as well just stay with CreateSpace because we know CreateSpace works. It's not perfect, but it's been around for many years. It definitely works. It doesn't have the problems. A few things that I really hated about Kindle Direct Publishing originally was when I tried to upload my files, they have an automatic vetter. So with CreateSpace, they have an auto vetter tool, like a previewer tool, but you could just skip it and just submit your files for review. And then, as long as the files are okay, they'd be approved and you could approve the file and request a print or proof copy right away. With KDP, when I tried to use it, which was a while ago now, it didn't let me skip that previewing process, so I would get stuck because those files that I know were well designed and would have been fine for CreateSpace weren't working for KDP Print, and I couldn't get past the vetter. And I was basically just, I didn't want to jump through a bunch of hoops and redo my book design templates many times to try to get it through the system, especially when I know the system is buggy, because I've uploaded files that were rejected over and over again, and then on like the fifth try they suddenly went through and everything was fine. However, it's now the end of 2018. CreateSpace is definitely shutting down. I heard this week that they're not even allowing new accounts to be set up, so I can't in good conscience anymore recommend authors go with CreateSpace because there isn't that option. KDP is the future of print on demand for Amazon. So I'm going to go and make this video and set up a book project myself and kind of talk through what that looks like, how to design the files for print, basically. We're not talking about ebooks. You'll see in the KDP dashboard, you can set up a Kindle ebook under Create New Title. That's a whole different thing. I have other videos about that. We're just talking about paperback. So if you already have a book here that's set up for ebook, you'll see the ebook is live. And then it will ask you to create a paperback or link an existing paperback. This is one of the many projects that I set up on CreateSpace. I'm just going to leave it on CreateSpace until they force me to move over. What I imagine will happen eventually is that Amazon will, right now I still think they're fine tuning things. I think eventually when they're sure that it works, they'll have to just migrate everybody over manually, because if they didn't, they would lose millions of catalog of books and projects. So for most of my projects, I'm just going to continue waiting because they work fine. They sell on CreateSpace. But for some of these new projects, I'm going to set them all up through KDP Print. And I haven't done this for a while, so some things are different than some earlier reviews that I made probably at the beginning of 2018. Things are a little better. There's still some things I don't like, but I'm going to kind of walk you through setting it up for my own book. And I've already started that a bit, so I can just go to continue setup rather than create paperback. It populates a lot of the basic stuff from the Kindle version directly, so I'm going to skip down. I don't really have to worry about that stuff. I'm going to skip down to the next page. Here it asks about ISBN. So I've always just let CreateSpace manually assign me whatever ISBN. Some people will argue that you want an ISBN that's cataloged directly with Bowker, but that's really if you're selling to libraries or bookstores. You don't, if you're just selling on Amazon, or if you don't focus on paperbacks or in events, even if you like bought your own copies and sold them at events, you'd be fine with a CreateSpace or KDP ISBN. You can register your own from Bowker if you want to use your own. I don't think there's enough benefits to justify recommending that. One thing that does matter though is on the back cover, at least with CreateSpace, what will happen is you can design your book cover and just leave a blank rectangular box at the back, and they will just add a barcode to that place. So they'll take this ISBN, which is just the number, and they'll make the barcode the scannable barcode, and they'll add that on the back of your book cover. If you want to get this into bookstores on consignment or however, most bookstores require a price, and on CreateSpace at least, the ISBN barcode that they make and put on your book cover doesn't have a price embedded. So if you wanted to have a price embedded in your barcode, then you would have to upload your own barcode. I have a free barcode maker at creativeindie-covers.com. There's some other tools like bookout.com, which I'll show you in a minute, where you can also make your own barcode. So if you want to go a step further, make your own barcode, embed your price. I would just set a price higher than you would feel comfortable selling it. Like, it's better to set it a little bit high, maybe $19.99 for paperback, so that in person you could discount it to $15 or $10 or whatever. So I would set a little high. That's all I'm saying. You'll be able to figure out how much you should charge for your paperback depending on the print size once you get into the pricing. I'll show you more about this stuff in a little bit when I'm actually designing my covers. So down here we have the actual print options. Generally, most fiction you'll stick with cream paper, and most nonfiction white paper. White paper is just better for clean academic stuff. Cream is a little bit better for narrative nonfiction or fiction. My favorite trim size is 5.25 by 8. That's roughly the same dimensions as 6 by 9. It's just a little bit smaller. It's a little more like hand friendly. And I'm actually going to show you what my book manuscript looks like. It's already been formatted for print so that I can explain what these bleed settings are. So bleed basically means the art or the images go to the end of the page. So in the one that I have formatted, for example, the fonts extend to the end of the page, so I would need to set bleed. I also have some things up here, like a full page graphic. It goes all the way to the end. So even if it's not on every page, even if it's just, a few pages, my chapter headings also kind of look like this. So I am going to select bleed, which just means the art goes to the images. So this is something I'm going to keep my eye on, which will be a little bit interesting because for a long time, if you wanted to do this, you would just make the art go to the edge of the page, but you would still use the actual manuscript print size. So for example, if I want a 5.25 by 8 inch book, that's the size I would set the pages on in Microsoft Word or whatever, and then I would save it as PDF, and it would be this size. So in CreateSpace, at least probably a year or two ago, you could set bleed and have images extending to the sides and set it up 5.25 by 8, and that would be fine. In the last year or so, they had this other thing going on where you had to choose bleed, but you also had to actually add some extra padding. I think it was 0.25 extra padding around the outside margins and the top and bottom. So just like, for example, I'll show you this also with the full print book cover template. There is the 2.5 margin, 0.25 margin around the template. That's trim that's going to get cut off. You kind of just work that out with the design. So they were saying for the interior file also, if it has images that extend to the end, you also need to add that extra size. However, with KDP print, I'm not sure you have to do that. So I'm going to try the first time just not doing that because it's kind of a pain in the ass to do. So I'm hoping they've gotten rid of that. This part with cover finish, people ask a lot, matte versus glossy. Generally, glossy is better for dark colors and vivid colors. Lots of dark light contrast, better for most fiction. Matte is a little better. Matte is an Argentinian tea, actually, so that's probably matte. I don't know how to pronounce it, but my point is it works better for nonfiction, really simple, clean, solid color type covers. Most nonfiction works better for. Something I've also heard with glossy, sometimes glossy covers tend to curl. So even if they're pretty new books, the outside cover can curl up or down, which kind of sucks. That's a quality issue, but it happens more like in really humid climates. This isn't going to affect your actual design files at all, so I would just upload your files, order a copy, then switch this setting, order another copy, see which one you prefer. I already uploaded my print paperback file for the interior manuscript. It was already formatted. I actually had it formatted in InDesign and saved as a PDF. You'll probably have a good looking PDF at this point. If you haven't formatted your book for print, it's really important you get all the pieces right, especially the front cover, the title page, the copyright page, and then what you put in the back matter is also really important for a call to action or getting readers on your email list, asking for reviews. So if you haven't done so already, you can visit DIYbookformats.com, where I have a bunch of book formatting templates that'll kind of help you to get started quickly. But for now, I'm going to skip down to the book cover. This isn't really a whole video about book design. I'm kind of just showing you how to upload things. So they have a cover creator. I'd love to play with that sometime. The CreateSpace cover creator was really bad. I don't expect the KDP cover creator to be much better, but I would like to play around with it and see what's possible. It might be easier to use for some people. But what I'm going to need to do first, I'll click on these just to show you. This one says learn more about book covers. I was playing around here earlier. I think it's kind of awesome. They say basically you have a calculator, download a template, try the cover creator, step-by-step guide, and then over here they have see a list of freelance designers. That's new and kind of cool because there's not very many people on that list, so I'm going to try to get some of my services or sites listed. It'd be nice for Amazon to recommend me since I recommend so many people to Amazon. But for now, I want a KDP template. So they had a cover template generator for CreateSpace. This is the KDP version. It's a little bit different, but pretty similar. And the main problem with this generator, which is the same problem that CreateSpace always had, is that it rounds up or down. So what's going to happen is I'll pick my trim size and my page count, and I can just look down on my PDF. If I look down on the bottom of the PDF, depending on which program you have, it may look a little bit different, but down here it just tells me how many pages I have. So it's 341 pages. And then I'll just go here and do 341 and cream. But when I download the cover template, it's actually rounding all the way up to 350 pages, which is a little different. So it gives me a zip file, which I can open. I have a PNG version, which is a picture. That's important if you're going to use an online graphics tool like Canva or my online tool. I'll show you that in a minute. For Photoshop, I just used the PDF, but it rounded up to 350 pages. So this is what, let's see, that's what this actually looks like. This is the one that comes from KDP Print. It's fine. It works. It's okay. But because it rounded up so much, it's a little bit off. It's not going to be a big thing. If you look in any bookstore, you're actually going to see that the spine is usually off by a couple millimeters, even with traditional books. So a lot of indie authors freak out if the spine is a millimeter off because they want it to be perfect, and they're really examining, their proof copy to make sure it's perfect. Readers won't really pay that close attention, but you'll see that the spine width is 0.88. And for this book, all I would have to do is upload my front cover, the back cover, the spine. I'll do that in a minute, but I wanted to show you by comparison the other tool I will usually use to get a little bit more accurate template is this site, bacao.com. They have free resources, and they have a CreateSpace KDP cover generator, so it looks like this. It's basically the same thing, but instead of rounding up, it gives you an exact template to match your page count. So I already did this. They email it to you. You open your email. You get a file that's almost identical to the one that you would get from KDP Print. The only difference is that it's actually for 341 instead of rounding up to 350. So I'll show you what that difference looks like. This is the one from KDP Print, and this is the one from Bacao that's for 341 pages. So instead of 0.88 spine width, we actually get 0.853. And if you look at the millimeters, actually, it's 22.225 millimeters versus 21.65. So it's less than a millimeter difference. And actually, like, this is actually a pretty big spread. To go from 341 to round up to 350, that's about as far as you could go. And that's still like just a little bit more than a half millimeter. I do like that the Bacao template also tells you the full width. So like if I was gonna, set this up in Photoshop and I could just set the width and the height, it gives me the actual full details, whereas the KDP print one doesn't really. It gives me this, which is 5.25, but it just means both half. So I would have to add up, the front and the back and the spine to get that number. Anyway, so it's not a big deal. I think the KDP print, template generator is probably totally fine. It's just something to consider. I personally prefer Bacao. If you have Photoshop, you could just drop this into Photoshop, add your art. That's actually what I'm going to do, so I'll kind of finish that up in a minute. Like I said, I just use the PDF. You might want to change or check that the image mode is set to RGB versus CMYK. For CreateSpace or for KDP print, I would just leave it RGB color, which is generally more for web. It's a little bit more colorful and vivid, so it's going to look a little more like your ebook, but some of that saturation or colors might be stripped out a little bit. So your finished print book isn't really going to be as vibrant as the book cover looks on your monitor. So some people get disappointed when they get the actual print. The colors can be off. I've also heard conflicting stuff between CreateSpace versus KDP print. I think I used to have to design for CreateSpace. I'd have to design the cover a little bit darker because in printing the cover would become lighter. I've actually heard in KDP print it's the opposite, so you have to design it a little bit lighter because the cover is going to come out a little bit darker. So that could just be variances in printing. I know they use a lot of different printers. Sometimes they're just out of ink. I've seen batches where it just doesn't print very well because they're out of some color. These things happen, so it's kind of hard to get consistent results. It's the kind of thing like authors will measure two books side by side and they'll notice the differences, but most readers would only get one book and they're not really going to notice that's not exactly the color that the authors wanted. With Lightning Source, if you decide to go with Lightning Source, which would be a different video, generally it's a little safer to go to CMYK first. Lightning Source doesn't handle super dark colors quite so well, so you can do this. If you save it as a PDF, this shouldn't really make a big difference anyway, but sometimes Lightning Source is picky with the files, which is one of the reasons I've always liked CreateSpace or KDP print, just because they're not quite so picky. So anyway, I leave mine in RGB color. I think other designers will probably tell you to switch to CMYK first. I think as long as you kind of know what the process is going to look like, it's fine. I like to see what the cover looks like, in full glory and full color. If you don't have Photoshop and if you're going to use an online tool though, I'll show you real quickly what that would look like. This is the online tool that I've been building for quite a while on DIY book covers. It's still not totally amazing. There's a few little bugs that I'm trying to sort out before I really invest in making all the templates. But this is pretty similar to Canva, where you can choose all these pre-formatted sizes, or you can add in your own size. So down here there's width versus height. So you'd have to know the pixel dimensions of your cover. So for a 6x9 cover, that's 1800 pixels by 2700 pixels just for the front. So if I was going to make a full print cover of 1 inch spine, then I would just double this width. So instead of 1800, it would be 3600. And that would be basically right, except it wouldn't have a spine. If I wanted to add the 1 inch spine, you're probably familiar with the term 300 dpi. That's kind of the basic for printing. So it's 300 pixels per inch. So a 1 inch width spine would be 300 pixels. So I could just add 300 to this. I'd get up to 900. And then that would be the right dimensions. This I can't actually drag in my template because the template that I have is really not a 1 inch spine width, and it's not 6x9. It's actually 5.25 by 8. So I don't have an example to drag in here, but I can kind of show you what it would look like. So In those zip files I showed you earlier that you get from Bukao or from KDP Print, you'll see these two files. So you have a PDF version or a PNG version. For most online tools, you can't use a PDF, but you can use a PNG because it's a graphic image file. So I don't think I can drag and drop in this tool actually. I think I have to go to add image and import. So here it will allow me to just select this PNG and it'll pop up like that. So if this was already the perfect size, it would fill the edges. Since it's not, I need to drag or drop it or move it around a little bit. And even so, it's not going to fit perfectly because like I said, this just isn't the right template for the dimensions that I've set up. But that's kind of how you would do it. Canva also has the ability to add a custom size. And for most stuff, like for really high quality book cover design, especially for fiction, which is a lot more technical, you generally need blended layers. That's why Canva and most online graphic tools just aren't going to work for really good covers. They're fine for simple nonfiction or fiction stuff. If you already have the art and you just need to add some simple text, Canva can work okay. I also think for finishing the spine in the back, which is probably going to be pretty clean and simple, mostly just text, you could do the art elsewhere and you could finish the spine and back in Canva or an online program. My tool actually allows you to blend layers, so I'll make a lot of other videos later about all the cool things you can do in this tool that you can't do in Canva or any other online tool. But for now, this is just kind of an option if you don't have Photoshop. It's also really easy just to hire someone on Fiverr.com who does have Photoshop. So if you already have art for a front cover, or even if you've done your own art, I probably recommend hiring like 5 cheap designers on Fiverr.com just to see if they can make something better, because chances are if you've made your own book cover, especially if you started from scratch or if you haven't followed any kind of templates or if you haven't watched all my videos and guides on book cover design yet, you've probably made some critical mistakes, and that's really something you don't want to play with. If you've spent all this time writing your book, you want people to read it. Your cover is the thing that you can screw up and totally ruin your sales. You couldn't even give your book away or get reviews if the cover isn't attractive to the right audience. So I recommend whatever you can afford for cover design, even if it's someone cheap on Fiverr. Sometimes they can do like a solidly mediocre job, especially for for nonfiction. For fiction, it's a little harder to find a quality designer on the cheap, but they're definitely out there. But what I was going to say is that it can be frustrating to do all this stuff on your own. So if you get frustrated or you don't have Photoshop, you can find someone on Fiverr.com for like between 20 or 50 bucks probably to finish the spine and back for you. And then you can just upload it. So I'm going to take a minute and finish this up. I'm actually a pretty messy designer in Photoshop, so I have some layers. I've tried to merge them down. So I basically have one background layer, I have one central figure, and then I have the text. So you want to kind of get it down to as few layers as possible, and then you can drag them over. The reason you don't really want to drag everything together, I also have some like color, vibrance, hue, saturation stuff. Ideally, like I would just have already merged that all together with the background art before. I want to have pretty clean background art, but I want to keep the text separate. And that's because when I move it over here, there's going to be some trim on the top and the bottom and the right side, the outside side margin. So the text is all going to have to be pulled in away from the edges, whereas the art isn't. Also, I usually design at 6x9 just because that's what I'm used to. So 6x9 is, like I said, 1800 by 2700. Which is one of the reasons I like 5.25 by 8, because it's not that far off. It's a little bit wider. So when I drag these layers over, it's not going to fit perfectly, and I'm going to have to like scale things down. You can also see I just dragged it over. I have a lot of extra background stuff that I need to crop out. The other thing that I will usually do is go down to the background layer, which is the template that I got, and just duplicate that layer and then bring it up to the front, and then just change the opacity so I can see through it. So that way I can kind of keep track of where things should be while I'm moving them around. And then once I have the background art kind of looking in the right place, I'll also resize my text and stuff just a little bit. So now the front is basically done. I'm going to get in a little bit of trouble here with the text that goes over the spine and the back, not only for design, but also because CreateSpace at least was really strict about text going over the design. So you couldn't purposely add text that goes over these design barriers. Even if you wanted to do it intentionally, they just wouldn't allow you to do it, which was a pain, especially for like really thin books, because they have these margins that you can't have text go over, and then if the spine is really thin, there's not actually that much room for spine text. But I'm going to leave it for now. The spine in the back, you basically just want to duplicate the art or have something that, you know, basically matches the color or texture of the front cover. I basically just duplicated what I already had on the front, and I can notice a couple things happening already. There's like a different color down here at the bottom, and also there's all this messy stuff that was being covered up by the girl, but if I don't have her on the back, I need to fix that stuff. So I basically just added a few layers and blended it down and made it a little bit darker. It looks fine. It's kind of just a mirror of the front. I'm going to just flatten this and then select a narrow portion of this to put on the spine. So this is kind of what I came up with. It's not perfect. It could use a little more designing, especially some ways to break up kind of the text, but it looks all right. Some things that I've changed or added, I changed the font up here just because I thought this flowery font, it's gonna go over the border too much. That's something I'd probably want to play with and get looking a little bit better. I added a simple website and basically a logo. I forget what, I haven't made a print cover for a long time, so my logo's probably a little bit different. I don't think it's necessary to have a publishing imprint or anything like that. I wouldn't go out and get like a fancy logo designed, but it does look nice to have some kind of, you know, something down here on the spine. I just use the text from Urban Epics. I take the U and the E. It makes a nice little logo down there. I'd also want to be careful if I was copy pasting. Up here it looks like I have some M dashes that didn't work out very well in Photoshop, so I'm just going to go back and replace these. Anyway, it could be better, but it's fine for now. One other thing I'll usually do is copy out this little barcode marker, and I'll just copy the rough shape of it, make a new layer, and then cover that up with a layer style and a color overlay. You probably don't even have to do that. You could probably just leave it yellow like they've got it. But that way it's just a nice white box. I can see where it is. KDP Print should be able to add a barcode there. Like I said earlier, that's probably where they'll leave it. I haven't really played around, like if you move it over here to make it line up with the text, will they just add the barcode there? I think they will, but if they like put it off the wrong place or something, it could look a little bit weird. I'm going to save it as a PDF. There's some stuff you could look for here. Generally, it's safest to go with PDF X1A 2001, even though that's like a super old version. That tends to save it in a way that's going to be the most effective for Lightning Source, especially. Like I said, they're a little picky. Otherwise, with CreateSpace or KDP Print as well, I don't think it's necessary to do that. I would take away these two, and it's probably going to take, it's going to save a pretty big file. So sometimes, like if the file is too big, you might want to check that the downsampling of the image compression, the JPEG, whatever, stuff that you could check or play around with. You might also just go with none for no compression. So finally, back in KDP, in the dashboard again, I can scroll down and go to upload a cover you have already made, print ready cover. I haven't seen this before. It says check this box if the cover you're uploading includes a barcode. That's kind of cool. It probably just saves them time so they don't have to double check it. I could learn more about barcode size and placement. I did move my barcode just a tiny bit and I added that white box, so I'm kind of curious how that will go over. So at this point it says my cover has uploaded successfully. I'm going to launch the previewer. Down here basically it says because I've made changes and uploaded these things, I can't save and continue until I've launched the previewer and checked out how it looks. I was actually expecting the previewer to flag a whole bunch of different issues. The only thing I actually see is it looks like it's putting the barcode on top, but it is putting it in that original place and not where I had made that white rectangle. So that's a really easy fix. All I have to do is go back and delete the white rectangle from the back of my cover, because I know that they're going to add their own cover, their own barcode there. I'm actually pretty excited they didn't flag this at all. So normally, like in CreateSpace, at least, previously, if I had any cover text that went outside of the border like this, or if I had any cover text that went, crossed over through the spine, because there was always this rigid line margin between, the front and the back and the spine, and I wasn't allowed to over design it. It seems like it's going to approve my file anyway, even though I've done that, which is kind of cool. I could go back and fix this one up here and just use the original font if that's not going to be a problem, if it overlaps a little bit on the front. I wouldn't really want that to happen, but it's interesting to know. It says it may actually, like once I submit it, they'll manually check it for quality standards, and then they might get back to me and say that that's, not okay, and I have to redesign it a little bit. I uploaded a new version. All I did was remove that white rectangular box, so now I'm going to hit approve. Now it lets me go on to the next step, so I can basically see a summary. This is all the stuff that I've set up. It also tells me my printing cost. So my printing cost for this book is $4.94. I actually went over to CreateSpace just to price check that, because I'm pretty sure it used to be cheaper on CreateSpace, and I get this really big pop-up reminding me that I should switch over to KDP Publishing. They're really trying to enforce this shift. Anyway, I'm going to save and continue. If I sell it for $14.99, I get a 60% rate for selling on Amazon and a 40% for expanded distribution. So this kind of just calculates really fast. I'll make $4 per sale on Amazon and $1 if it's off Amazon and other marketplaces. Down here's the terms of condition. It seems like I can just immediately click publish, and then within 72 hours it'll be available for purchase. Otherwise, I could click to request approved copy first and send it to myself. I don't tend to do that. With CreateSpace it was fine. Now on KDP they actually, I think, put like proof on the cover on the interior so that you can't really give it away or sell it or do anything with it. So that's personally why I'd skip. It's probably a good idea to order approved copy, but I also just like to publish kind of quickly. So I'm going to skip this and just hit publish. Just because it's published doesn't really mean anybody's going to see it. So if I put it up on Amazon, if I don't promote it or tell anybody about it or share the link, it's unlikely that anyone's going to buy it anyway. If you're really worried about that, you could just set up the price really high at like $30 or $40 just to make sure nobody buys it until you've ordered a copy and made sure your Amazon page looks okay. But anyway, it tells me that mine, like pending review, everything is fine. I'm curious about the review. I'm actually surprised my files went through so easily, because I have had trouble with KDP print in the past, but it seems like it's a lot smoother of an experience than I remember. So it looks like they're starting to get, their act together, and the system is starting to work. We'll see what they come back with, and if they're actually going to allow all those things that I did on my paperback. Knowing those things will let me have a little bit more design freedom, depending on what they allow and what they don't allow. I might be able to get, put a little more time and investment into my paperback covers just to play around with the design in a way that I couldn't do on CreateSpace. So that would be kind of interesting. For now, I'm just going to click done. I'm also going to end this video. Hopefully I've said some things that made sense, or at least seeing how the process all works together with KDP print. Hopefully that makes it a little bit easier for you to design your book files for cover and interior, and then get them uploaded and published.